Welcome to the Not Old Better Show, the show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Welcome to the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Seed. Seed supports gut health with DS-01. We have an exceptional guest today in Richard Schenkel, whose illustrious career journey and innovative new venture called Phoenix 3 promises to offer a wealth of insights. We don't often get a chance to speak candidly with a Fortune 100, 500, or founder, CEO of a large corporation, but this is special. Richard Schenkel, previously the CEO and founder of Compass Community Living, made a bold decision to step away from his role and embark on a new path. His goal? To help entrepreneurial companies navigate and avoid common pitfalls across various industries, particularly within senior living. So important to our health conscious and aging, not old, better show audience. It's going to be a great episode and interview. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Richard Schenkel's passion for senior living and the industry has deep roots stemming from his early experiences in food service at a nursing home. His latest venture, Phoenix 3, focuses on empowering distributed employment organizations in senior living, healthcare, and corporate services by providing essential resources and capital for growth. In our discussion, you will learn about Richard's positive outlook and his unwavering focus on people. Richard Schenkel shares the strategic insights behind Phoenix 3 Holdings' investment and leadership approach. Richard Schenkel stresses today with us the importance of investing in people and understanding the businesses they support beyond just industry trends and profitability. Richard Schenkel speaks candidly about the challenges he faced while starting his own company, particularly in attracting the right talent and maintaining uncompromising quality standards. Richard Schenkel advised aspiring entrepreneurs to gain experience from larger organizations to better understand business operations, structures, and accountability. Again, a great episode. We're going to learn much from Richard Schenkel. So join us as we explore these topics and more with Richard Schenkel, a true visionary in the senior living and healthcare sectors. Well, Richard Schenkel, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Wonderful to be here.
So nice to talk with you too. I've had a chance to do a little bit of research on you. You've had this this amazing career that I think is very focused on an area of interest for me, for my audience. My own mom is 93. My sisters and I moved her to a retirement community in the Seattle, Washington area, but we'll get into all of that. And I wanted to start, though, with a question for you on what I found to be, I thought, a very impressive message from you online. It's actually on LinkedIn, and we'll put some links so that our audience can find it. But you wrote this really nice note. The title of it is A Message from Richard. Today is not goodbye, but a hello to new beginnings. So many in our audience, including me, have had new beginnings. Maybe tell us a little bit about your own new beginning, what you're doing now, and just briefly where you've come from.
Yeah, great. I always look at life as a journey. And when I left my former role at Compass Community Living as the CEO and founder, it was just the right time to look at other opportunities in life. And for me, life is about a journey. And sometimes you just don't know where the journey is going to take you, and you just take that risk. And I've always been a risk taker and an entrepreneur. And as I looked at what to do next in the world, and I don't want to sound crazy, but retirement was never anything in my DNA.
Right.
Indirectly, I think I love to keep my brain active because I think it's the most healthy thing that nobody can tell you. Well, why do you want to keep doing this? And I looked at the next step in life and came across this opportunity that I've always wanted was how do you help entrepreneurial companies avoid potholes, pitfalls, whatever industries they're in, and have the resources and the wisdom that you've garnered over all those years. How you look at life is, wouldn't it be great if you could go back 40 years with the knowledge you have and do it again, I think you'd probably look at life very differently. And I said, what if we help some other organizations in certain lines of business, in particular, in lifestyle industries or distributed employment organizations, meaning they have a decentralized workforce in senior living, healthcare, or corporate services, help those organizations grow with resources that understand their industries, as well as capital to help them grow and be growth-oriented organizations. And that's what Phoenix 3 started out as, was, okay, how do we attract those people to come to work for us too? And we've done a wonderful job of seeding our organization and bringing in portfolio companies that need those resources to help them incrementally grow in markets we also understand and provide the capital. So that's our journey right today. We even look at seeding companies with startup capital and all that we feel have real great entrepreneurs against it. But in my opinion, it's all about the people. And if you find those right founders and cultures and you give them those resources and some capital, the majority of them will be very successful. So that's where we're going.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's a wonderful perspective. And my research of you tells me that you do have this really great outlook on life. Nice to hear that you focus on the people. I always like to ask CEOs, business leaders, how they ended up focusing on one particular industry. What was it about senior living that attracted you? Because I have my own personal association with it now. I'm getting older, but I have an older parent who is involved. Was that your route? What was it about the senior living community and industry that attracted you?
Well, I'd like to say it was that clean cut. I started my career when I was very young working for my father, who had a luncheonette in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay, and, that's good.
That wasn't going to last forever. Frankly, working with parents is fundamentally a challenge to begin with. And when I was probably 15, I went looking for a job, and I found a job at a nursing home in New Jersey, in West Orange, New Jersey, working in the food service. And at 15 and 16, I never even knew what a nursing home and the food and dining looked like then. And then it was called the dietary department. And that's how it all began. And I kind of really enjoyed the environment in senior living. Over some time, throughout my early part of my career, I moved into healthcare as well. And those were two of the fundamental businesses I spent a lot of time learning and operating. And that's how it all began. And it never left my DNA. And it's always been a very interesting model that clearly has changed over the years tremendously.
Thank you very much for sharing that, because I think that journey, as you put it, that path, I think is always interesting to everybody. You use the word, and in some of the research of you, I found the word disruption. And you mentioned this path that you've been on and this very nice message that you wrote on LinkedIn. And you cite Unidyne and you cite Compass Community Living. With respect to disruption, what is it about the senior living community that you're now taking into Phoenix 3 that needs to be disrupted?
The world has changed again. And I think excellent leaders always want to disrupt and don't look at the status quo of where to stay. And there's so many advantages of those maverick leaders out there. I think senior living is at that cusp again of retaining residents and attracting residents. It's definitely a much more lifestyle business today than ever before. And if they don't change in a lot of amenity areas, they're not going to attract the audience of their potential residents the same old way. And I look at individuals like you and I and our physical health, our wellness, what your expectations are, and they are so different than 20 years ago, of where a resident would look and have dinner at 4 o'clock or 4:30. And I think there's still a lot of that out there today. But if you're not forward thinking and think the product that you have today is going to be the product over the next 5 and 10 years or even shorter, I think you're all kidding yourselves. You have a very discerning consumer. You have choice, and there is no captivity of any of this anymore. So if you don't disrupt, And if you are providing services in the same old way, I think you're missing the mark.
In my own case, not to personalize this, but I will tell you that it's interesting to hear you talk about a background and foundation in this dietary services and some of the food service part of it, because I noticed that with my mom's facility, and I found this in some of the other research, that there's a great deal of emphasis on the restaurant options, whether they are a full service coffee shop or whether it is a nightly restaurant. Especially during COVID, I noticed that the facilities kind of upped the game in terms of their hiring more professional chefs. Is that a strategy that you're adopting to really kind of inject a unique, innovative approach to eating? Because many of the people in my age group, our tastes, our ability to taste is diminishing some.
Yeah, I think what you have to look at in today's day and age is you need to take a retail restaurant approach to the dining service, in particular, certain, whether it's behavioral health or senior living, because of the discerning consumer. The days of having a centralized dining room where you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week in one venue, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean it's not happening today, but I think the disruption in the industry has got to start, and it's starting slowly. But what you just said, you've got to take an approach very similar to what I would call the college and university market. Many, many years ago, it was very much a one dining room. You'd go, you'd have a board plan. You didn't have flex dollars, which are really king. I think if I were doing it and I were owning and operating senior living facilities, I would blow it up. I'd get into a complete restaurant approach with retail locations, making sure I have enough of the demographic there as well as the numbers there to substantiate it. But I think then you stand on your own of attracting those residents based on different retail approaches, different venues, and different looks and feel. And that's the opportunity out there, in my opinion.
Hey everyone, it's Paul. I mentioned our sponsor today, Seed. Seed supports gut health with DSO1. Summer's here, and while I am all about soaking up the sun and hitting the trails, there's one thing I never leave behind: my gut health. But whether I'm kayaking on a lake or trekking through the mountains, my microbiome is along for the ride. Fun fact, did you know we have 38 trillion bacteria living in and on us? Crazy, right? So a personal endorsement, this is why I love Seed's DS01 Daily Symbiotic. It's my go-to for keeping things balanced and happy in the gut department. Go to seed.com/NOB and use code 25NOB. All of this will be in our show notes to get 25% off your first month of Seed's DS01 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/NOB, code 25NOB. Stay healthy, everyone. Happy summer. Our guest is Richard Schenkel. Richard Schenkel is the CEO and founder of Phoenix 3 Holdings, very much a company that is driven through, it sounds like, venture funding and growth through company development and leadership. Maybe give some advice to our audience and tell us some of the advice that you give to clients of yours at Phoenix 3. What are you telling them to beware of? How do you develop leaders? What is it that attracts you to particular individuals that Phoenix 3 wants to invest in order to disrupt some of this industry?
I think the first thing is always who they are. I think at the end of the day, the leadership style of that CEO and other executives at the C-suite are so key to make the right investments. Forget the industries, number one. So it's the people that you're investing in. And I think that goes hand in hand, culture. I mean, when I built out my last couple of organizations, it was about culture and people. And if you do that correctly, you have a win. That doesn't mean you found the right niche to play in or business, but I'll tell you what, those things outweigh just saying, I'm just going to hire people. So when we look at that at Phoenix 3, those are really one variable. We also then look at the industries they play in and making sure there's what we call white space in those industries, because who wants to be in an industry where 100% has already been contracted or something and you're just flipping agreements? in particular in the markets we focus in, not just in food and hospitality, but in all, we look for white space in those markets. So high growth opportunity. We're really not in the VC. We don't like to do that. That's a high risk, but we will look for companies under $100 million to make CapEx investments and provide resources who are on a trajectory of profitability. That is something that's very near and dear to us as an organization. So people, growth, and as well as the markets, as we look at them, highly understood. People make investments, or companies do, and they don't even know what the business really does. We take a deep-seated understanding in those businesses. And if we don't understand them, we won't invest. Because I've never understood how you invest in an organization. It's kind of like buying stock. When somebody says, Richard, the chip business, like the AI chip business, I think it's a phenomenal business. I think there's great public companies out there. But I don't know about you, Paul. Do you even understand how an AI chip operates?
No, I don't think I can't even begin to tell you that.
And that's what I say. And I say, well, how can I invest in something that I don't even understand? And many years ago, one of our investors in Unidyne always said to me, we only invest in industries that we can easily understand. Not that we have to go spend 6 months understanding how this business works, but I call them fundamentals of the business. So, that's kind of where we focus.
Well, thank you again for that. I appreciate all of the background there. It's interesting to hear this term white space. I like that phrase an awful lot. That tells me about potential. Again, congratulations on this wonderful career working for Marriott, having been a founder of our company, currently having founded Phoenix 3, all of these strategic initiatives that you have underway. What are some of the obstacles that you've faced? What are some of the challenges that have developed you to this point? Because we've all faced them. We've all had them in our careers and in our lives.
I think the biggest challenge when you start an organization, assuming you have figured out where you want to focus the organization on what type of business model, is selecting and attracting not C talent, but A talent from day one. And I think founders tend not to do that very well initially because of capital needs. And I've taken a much different approach that let's move the capital aside and attract those right people, and they will get you where you want to go. But I've seen so many times where a founder just, unfortunately, for whatever the organization is in any business, they just don't have deep-seated pockets. So they have to compromise on what they really need, whether it be a CFO, a CEO, a COO, just based on economic issues. And then they wind up in X period of time having to make another transition because they've outgrown that talent. Instead of saying, what if I really go for that gusto of somebody who's an entrepreneur and all, and I know it's going to stretch my wallet, but I have somebody who really has bandwidth and can grow this organization. So that's one thing I think is still a big obstacle out there for a lot of founders. And the other one is hire brighter people than yourself. The brightest people I know that they may not be as bright, but they know how to hire and select brighter people. And that is the best advice I can give anybody. Even if it's going to challenge you, it will get you where you want to go.
Well, let's go back a few years in your career and talk about Aramark and talk about Marriott, what you learned from those big companies, because I think many in our audience, we hear the phrase, it takes a village. And so many grandparents are helping with grandchildren. They're helping with their own children. They're providing some support. They're supplying guidance, all of those kinds of things. What was it that you learned about Aramark and Marriott that you think is applicable to today's leader and today's employee?
When I look back on my personal career and my learnings, and it wasn't done by design, it just happened to happen. I was always entrepreneurial. But I think if you work at a larger organization, forget the size, it teaches you about structure, process, systems, and accountability like nowhere else. And I believe if there was any advice I can give to somebody, don't start your first company and you've never worked anywhere else because you're unsure of just all the walls and the requirements. I think you go to a larger organization and you learn from that. And if you have that burning in the belly and you really want to break out, I think you then have some learnings to take with you. And I was very fortunate that I learned from some of the better and best organizations on people, systems, and all, and then was able to bring that into a starting up companies and saying, wow. And I think it also gives that founder a lot of runway, as I call it, that there are founders, unfortunately, that just get outgrown in their own organizations. And you see it where to professionalize the organization or just the skill sets. I had been very fortunate to take companies from zero to a couple $1 billion as the founder and CEO. And those are more unique than norm. And I think part of it was having had that large company experience and really saying, okay, I get it. That would be one of my advices to somebody.
Well, final question for you, Richard Schenkel. We so appreciate your generous time today. I love what I do and feel like I'm very fortunate for doing it. In my research of you, I've found that you seem to be very much a generous person. You also seem to be somebody who has a great deal of gratitude. Maybe tell us, as a last thought, what are some of your most memorable career moments where you've had both this passion for what you do and observed some real success in doing it?
Yeah, I would say in my last couple roles, watching people, both hourly associates and some of our leaders, just grow and watch how they have grown over the years and just, I call it's like a flower. You water them and give them water and they grow. It's really memorable to me to watch these individuals grow and take on other opportunities in an organization that you start. And then you look back and say, you guys all remember when we used to have a real lot of fun and we didn't even know what we were doing. I think that's really memorable. Changing people's lives. I mean, when you really think about it, if you do things right, and we didn't even get into this, the Phoenix 3 hole, I do believe when you give people also ownership, it's a game changer. I mean, for everybody. And the world's changing. Just paying people more dollars per hour or more compensation, there's a lot more to it. Or just giving them better healthcare benefits. I think that's changed. I think you have got to change how you think, what motivates people today.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Thank you. Such a breath of fresh air, Richard Schenkel. We appreciate your time. Thanks for all you're doing and congratulations on this work. Please take this forward with the senior living area in particular. I know our audience is going to be interested in the future. I'll selfishly ask you if you'll come back at some point as you do more work in this industry. Let us know what that is in these changes, because I think it's going to be very relevant to all of us.
I would love to. You know, we're working on a lot of different things at Phoenix 3. We have some big things going on right now. And Paul, why don't you just check with some of our folks? We'd love to let you be one of the first to know when we know where we're headed. Perfect. Thank you, Richard, so much and have a great day. Be well.
You too. My thanks to Seed for sponsoring today's show. Seed supports gut health with DS01. Please support our sponsors as they in turn support the show. My thanks to Richard Schenkel for his time and expertise today. My thanks to executive producer Sam Hanniger for all he does in the way of sound design and everything else. My thanks to you, our wonderful audience here on radio and podcast. Please be well, be safe, and let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Not Old Better Show. To find out more about all of today's stories or to view our extensive back catalog of previous shows, simply visit notold-better.com. Join us again next time as we deep dive into some of the most fascinating real-life stories from across the world, all focused on this wonderful experience of getting better, not just older. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show.
Hi, one final thing. Please check out our website for this episode and all episodes at notold-better.com or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to check out your local radio stations to find out more about the Not Old Better Show on podcast and radio. You can find us all over social media. Our Twitter feed is Not Old Better, and we're on Instagram at Not Old Better too. The Not Old Better Show is a production of NOBS Studios. I'm Paul Vogelsang, and I hope you'll join me again next time to talk about better. The Not Old Better Show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.